Unsighted is a game with combat like Sekiro, dungeons like Zelda, and some of the best bosses I've fought this year. Every year, games like this appear and fly right under the radar of 99% of us, while the remaining 1% sound completely insane as we desperately try to convince our friends to play these hidden gems. So that's exactly what I'm about to do for the next few minutes. Unsighted is about a meteor that landed on Earth one day. This meteor is the source of something called anima, which gives automatons sentience. Humans, as humans do, don't like the fact that other things have become conscious and naturally try to control them. This is Alma, an android built to give said humans hands. She's the main character. One day, a tower landed on the meteor, and out of it came these things. Now, like I said, the meteor is the source of all the anima, so with it covered by this tower, all of the robots, androids, and other mechanical friends are gonna run out of consciousness and become unsighted. You know, like the title of Raquel, Alma's best friend, goes to the tower to try to do something about this situation. And that's all I'm gonna say about the story right now, because I really don't want to spoil anything. It's not Final Fantasy, sure, but it's a good enough story with some great moments and a satisfying ending. Now let's talk about something I'm a bit more familiar with, something more gameplay oriented. The thing that makes this game a Metroidvania, the dungeons and the upgrades. The dungeons in this game are extremely unique. They feel far less limited and constricted than the traditional Zelda dungeons. There are puzzles, sure, but they're all short and relatively easy. These dungeons focus more on combat and platforming. The game does this interesting thing where it gives you the dungeon item pretty early on. This allows most of the dungeon to be dedicated to using your new item in interesting and fun ways. Speaking of those items you find in dungeons, they all make traversal and combat even better. Look at the spinner, for example. Upon receiving this item, you can now slide around the world at twice the speed. The movement this item adds is fantastic, and it's not the only one of its kind. Every item in the dungeon improves on either combat, movement, or both. Now let's talk about that combat. It is technically the best part of the game after all. Combat in Unsighted is pretty fundamentally similar to most top-down combat in games. You have a sword or an axe and a secondary weapon that can be anything from a shuriken to a pistol. You can heal by using these syringes on the top left, and you refill them by attacking and defeating enemies. When you attack with a melee weapon, you lose stamina. This is here to prevent you from mindlessly mashing, and it also forces you to focus on the best part of the combat. Everything I've mentioned up to this point are just the fundamentals of the combat. But there's one key mechanic that combat is built around. The combat in Unsighted is all about parrying. Being a top-down game, it can sometimes be hard to tell exactly when an enemy is going to attack. Unsighted solves this problem by making enemies flash red just before they attack. These red flashes are extremely important as they aid tremendously in timing your parries. So what exactly does parrying do? Well, if you time it early or late, it does nothing but stun both you and the enemy. But if you time it just right, you can stun your enemy and hit for a massive amount of damage. Some enemies even require multiple parries to stun them. Another genius part about this parrying system is that it can be done multiple times in a row against different enemies. All of these aspects tie together to make a combat system that doesn't have a single break in the action if you're skilled enough. Okay, but what about when the combat is really tested? What about the bosses? The bosses are the best part of Unsighted. For this section, I'll only be going over one early game boss because again, I really want to avoid spoilers as much as I can. If you've played a Zelda game, this boss will instantly stand out to you since it follows some similar patterns. You light your shuriken on fire and burn away its shield, then you can attack. But it doesn't stop there. Now that the shields are gone, the real fight can begin. Without its shield, the boss goes on the offensive, sporadically spiraling about the battlefield. You can actually parry this attack and stun the boss for some big damage. After you deal enough damage, it spawns these hands and hides in its shield again like a coward. Beat the hands, break the shield, and the pattern continues until the fight ends. Is what I would say if the bosses in this game weren't as impressive as they are. After you beat the boss, it splits into 3. Each copy uses the exact same moves you've seen throughout the rest of the fight, meaning you're fully equipped to deal with them. This creates an excellent flow of parrying, dodging, and attacking to finish off a brilliant first boss. I won't talk about the rest of the bosses to avoid spoilers, but believe me when I say this isn't even the best boss in the game. Every boss has unique mechanics that make them a joy to fight, and you'll see exactly what I mean when you play the game for yourself. It's almost unbelievable to me that a game this good is so unknown, so hopefully a few more people will play this game as a result of this video. It's not often that a true hidden gem like this comes around, and it's only 10 hours long, so it's really not much of a commitment. It's super important to support games like this since it gives smaller developers a chance to make even more wonderful games. And speaking of supporting smaller creators, you could subscribe to me. It's free and it would help me out a ton as I'm trying to reach 10 million by the end of the year. Anyway, thanks for watching.